As was announced, Brother Jay got sick, and he was sick all night and having some difficulties. So I'm filling in for him, who is filling in for someone else. So second hit, going down the batting list, right? Thank you for the opportunity. I'm gonna give you some things to think about tonight, and maybe help some things with anxiety and things in life that are very difficult, and understand anxiety a little better and what anxiety really is and why we have to deal with it in our lives. All of us have it. All of us are going to have to deal with it. And sometimes we get all wound up about it, but it's a part of life. We'll talk about what is normal and what is abnormal anxiety. And we're going to discuss that here this evening as we go through this. If you should have any questions, please ask me, and I'll let you know what I can about the situation we have at hand. But I will tell you this, anxiety is something that everybody has to deal with. And if you think that just because you're a Christian, you're not going to have to deal with it, well, you're wrong. And I'm wrong if I think that. And as I've heard people say, why do I have so much anxiety? Why am I feeling so anxious today? And a lot of times that's things that's going on in the normal realm of life. And we need to think about that as we go through this. Dealing with anxiety is them things that kind of anxiety, I don't really see that very well now because I had to make it small to get it all on these slides. But anxiety is the body's physical response to a threat or perceived threat in our lives. And that can be from a lot of different things. It's what causes a heart pounding, a rapid breathing, butterflies in the stomach, and a burst of energy, as well as mental responses such as excessive fears, worries, or obsessive thinking. And that comes from Health Direct. And it is normal, healthy to be anxious in times of stress. That is normal, and that is healthy. And we're going to discuss why that is here in just a little bit. If you think not, you ever had a child get hurt? If you ever had health problems, a failure, have you ever taken a test for something and you weren't prepared? Does that cause anxiety? Sure it does. And sometimes just whether you're going to pass at the grade that you want to pass with or not. An accident, a fire, and on it goes. It is a normal reaction to things that happen. And in our body, when we have this anxiety or adrenaline rush, if you would, it's the kind of the old theory, the fight or flight thing. What am I going to do, right, in this situation? And how am I going to handle this situation? And that is normal. And on it goes. An abnormal, unhealthy anxiety is feeling apprehensive or powerless. Feeling like something bad is about to happen all the time. Feeling you're in danger. A racing mind. Difficulty concentrating, finding it hard to think. And memory problems. Again, that came from Health Direct, where doctors who deal with this all the time. And anxiety is one of them things that we hear a lot more about, it seems like today, than we ever have. And anxious moments and all the mediciners out there to try to fix this and all the things that we're dealing with. So know assuredly that anxiety is normal. So if you feel anxious about things, there is a normal level of anxiety. When it goes beyond that, then that's when we have problems. And that's when we get into things that look like this, right? And our hair is about to pull our hair out. We don't know what to do. And anxiety just means a worries, concern, or care. And we all have those in our lives. We all have levels of anxiety depending on the situation. And that's what's normal in life. And anxieties now revolve around work, money, family life, health, and other critical issues that demand a person's attention. There's always going to be a level of anxiety. And sometimes we think that if we pray to God that anxiety will go away, and it doesn't always, does it? Sometimes we have to deal with what the situation is. And the answer is not always yes, sometimes it's no, and dealing with that. Again, there is a healthy and an unhealthy anxiety in life. So if you're feeling anxious at times, that's normal. And we beat ourselves up about that. Why do I feel this way? Why is this thing the way it is? And it is normal to feel anxious about things. It's when we go too far with it that it consumes us, and the things in our lives becomes a mental health issue sometimes, and other things that are very difficult to deal with. Okay, and then we have that when an individual potentially harmful or worrying triggers. Feelings of anxiety are not only normal, but necessary to survive. And there's nothing wrong with being anxious. There's nothing wrong with feeling anxiety. But when anxiety consumes us, and we'll discuss this a little bit more as we get in here, so bear with me as we go through the next few slides on this. But there is a normal and an abnormal anxiety. Feelings that are there sometimes cause that and the things that happen. So we need to think about that. You remember the seed sown among thorns and the parable of the sower and all the things going on. If you go to Matthew 13:22, and one of them whom the seed was sown among thorns, and this is a man who hears the word. And the worry of the world and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. So there is worry in this world, and sometimes we get all caught up in that. And the things that are going on in this world, things that we can't even change, sometimes consume us, and that's when it becomes unhealthy or abnormal. And we need to understand that. Luke better explains this in Luke 8:14. It says, "And the seed which fell among thorns, these are the ones who have heard, and they also go on their way, are choked with the worries and riches and pleasures of this life, and bring no fruit to maturity." So as we can see these things in life and putting our priorities in the right places, even though we have to deal with anxiety and anxious moments in our life, we need to lean upon the Lord when those things happen. And there's going to be those times. You're not going to wave a magic wand and they're going to go away, and I'm not going to. And we need to understand that. When we lean upon the Lord, and these times when everything just seems to be getting to us, and those anxious moments and the anxiety is as thick that you can cut it with a knife, so to speak, and we're trying to figure all these things out. And Psalmist in 55:22 says, "Cast your burdens upon the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never allow the righteous to be shaken, even though it's there." And the proverb writer says in Proverbs 12:25, "Anxiety in a man's heart weighs it down, but a good word makes it glad." And we've all had those moments in our life when we just think, wow, how am I going to deal with this situation? How am I going to handle this situation? And all the things that are going on. And that's when the heavy heart, our heart gets weighed down with the worries of this world and the things around us. But when a good word is said, it lifts us up. We feel better. We're exhorted, even though we're down and the things in our life are trying, to say the least. Again, the psalmist in 94:19 says, "When my anxious thoughts multiply within me, your consolations delight my soul." Some days we have more anxiety to deal with than others. Sometimes it's self-inflicted anxiety because of something that we have done. And we're trying to figure out some way to deal with it, sometimes some way to get out of it, and all the things are happening so fast around us. And all the things that are consuming us within us and how we're going to handle those thoughts. Those nail-biting situations, if you would. And then that's when we have to go back to the sower and the seed that was sown and thrown upon the ground among thorns. And that's what we are in this world. We're springing up among thorns and the cares and troubles of this world. and the things that are causing us so much problems. And we need to remember that he cares for you. Don't stress the could haves, if I should have, or it would have. And that's where we get caught up in things. We look back and we try to change all the things that's already happened, which we can't change. We try to plan for the future, which may never happen. And today is what's really going to consume us more than the rest of them. All right, and over in 1 Peter, in 1 Peter 5 and verse 6 and 7, it says, therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you at the proper time, casting your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. I believe the King James Version there uses the word, your cares on him. So we all have them. We're not going to get away from them. We're going to have to deal with them. If we think we're going to wave a magic wand and it's never going to happen, well, that's not realistic, that's for sure. And we stress out of the could haves and the should haves and the would haves and all the other haves that are out there. And it causes us some problems at times. And we need to understand that in this life that we live and how we live it. And when somebody says, well, you shouldn't have anxiety because you're a Christian, that's not true. And that's something that is foreign to the Bible, and we'll talk about that just in a little bit. Because we all have cares and worries in this life, some greater than others. Sometimes they're greater than others. And how we handle them will define us as a person, as a Christian, and on it goes. And how we handle those situations. And if we don't always handle them right, it's because of the way that we are trying to get around it. And we can see all kinds of Bible characters, if we want to put up there in the stressful situations in their lives or the anxious moments and how they handled them, and some were good, some were bad. And we need to learn from those examples that are written there for our learning. And hopefully not make the same mistakes, which is easy for us to do. And by prayer, supplication, and thanksgiving, certainly with this next Thursday being a day of Thanksgiving in our country, we can understand that. When we have a good prayer life, and a good prayer life on behalf of others, and a thankful prayer life, it'll change our whole heart. The things within us will change. We won't be consumed with all the things that this world brings about. There's been too many times that people dwell on the should haves and just worry about living your life so you can go to heaven. And if you don't think so, you look at all the people that have lost mass fortunes over the years and committed suicide because they lost their money. So-called love of your life slips away and you don't see them. And on it goes. And the things in life will be stressful at times. There will be anxious moments. There will be anxiety. And we need to learn how to handle that in our life. If you go over to Philippians 4 and verses 4 through 7, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Let your gentle spirit be known to all men. The Lord is near. Be anxious for nothing. And this is where this all comes about. And I've heard lesson preached on that you should never be anxious. And that's not true. But in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your request be known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension or understanding, the King James Version, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So it sucks us to be careful for nothing. And in life, we get so consumed about the things that may never happen, or already have happened, and may never will happen. And then we become troubled with the cares that are consuming us of the things that did not happen or could not happen, would not happen, you name it. And all the things in life and all the troubles and all the things that are consuming us, we need to understand that. Paul does not mean that Christians should be indifferent about the responsibilities of life. You're going to have worries in life. Let me give you a perfect example. We've heard for years, when it comes to the end of the money and you got too many bills, do you think that's going to cause some worry? The death of a loved one, or especially a child. Do you suppose that will cause anxiety? Regrets causes anxiety. It's going to be there. And if we deal with it and how we deal with it, it's going to mean a lot to us, the cares of this world. And to understand that we have responsibilities in this life. Tend to, and that doesn't mean that there won't be stressful moments in life that we have to deal with, or anxious moments or anxiety. It's going to happen. But when we do put our cares and burdens and anxious moments on the Lord, it makes it a lot easier. And instead, we should put our trust in the Lord, and that they may make their troubles a matter of prayer. And then we need to understand that in the matters of prayer, it makes life easier. Does prayer always make things go away? No. As I said, sometimes God says no. And we have our trouble with taking no as human beings. And sometimes God says yes. And we have a lot of problems internally with when we want something and God says no, or if we want something and we want it now and God says no, and later if we would have stayed the course, we would have had what we should have had if we stayed the course. Then there's those regrets, those anxieties, those anxious moments. Oh, if I would have just done this. And we need to understand that as going through this life and all the things that are happening in our life and those anxious moments. By prayer, supplication, that is praying for someone else. And thanksgiving to God that we will be giving him the thanks. Now, sometimes we cause our own problems, and it causes anxious moments when we actually could correct those problems before they become anxious moments, but we don't. That's because we're human, and we let those things happen. So we need to always think about that. And as we're thinking about that, our interest should be his interest, and not always fretting about the future or the past. And we do that. Boy, things would be so much different if I'd have just done that, or God gives me this tomorrow, or the next day, or the next year, or 10 years from now. I'll be so blessed. Of this life and the things that are happening. Take time to pray for others, to thank God, and to help with those worries and so-called fretting we have in our eternal body. Words of life. Today, I will not stress over things I cannot control. And boy, is that a hard statement, right? The things I cannot control, or the things I should have controlled, I didn't control, and now I'm having to deal with them. What am I going to do as a Christian, right? And one of the verses that Les read in Matthew 6:25, it says, "For this reason I say to you, do not be worried about your life." And that's where we get tangled up, all the things we have. So, as to what you will eat or what you will drink or what, nor for your body, as to what you will put on, is not your life more than food, and your body more than clothing? And as we think about that and that whole list of verses that Les read, and all the things we worried about, get so consumed about, sometimes are not the best. And sometimes we need to let God have some of those and take them off our plate, right? But if you think there won't be stress at work, in school, in life, in a family, among siblings, you're wrong. And even in the Lord's church. There'll be stress, there'll be anxious moments, and there'll be those things that we're having trouble handling and understanding and comprehending. And then that's when we need to pray to God and try to be the kind of person we need to be so that we can rise above that. Over in Hebrews 13:5 and 6, he says, make sure that your character is free from the love of money, being content with what you have. For he himself has said, I will never desert you, nor will I ever forsake you. So that we confidently say, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What will man do to me? So when we think about all these things in life and all these anxious moments, which we all have, and when we admit that, we know we're having anxious moments, and we try to get somebody to help us and the anxiety doesn't go away, then we need to understand that sometimes we cause those anxious moments by the way we handle situations. You know, I heard a guy tell a lady years ago, I cannot believe that anybody would live from paycheck to paycheck. Profound statement, right? But the problem is the majority of people live from paycheck to paycheck to pay their bills. And she was very upset and couldn't believe that he would ever say that. Certainly the person that made that statement, his father had given him everything in life, and he had to want for nothing. But when you see other people and how they struggle, and then you understand that, we will better comprehend where we should be. And then we have this personality here called the devil. And the devil is one of them things that we don't really look at him that way. And he doesn't come at us that way. But that's the way it's talked about in the scriptures in 1 Peter 5:8-9, is that he's like a roaring lion. And oh, it'd be so nice every time we were being tempted if that happened, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be nice if we saw that picture every time it was happening? But it doesn't work that way. It happens after we have fallen for sin. But it says, be sober, be of sober spirit, be on the alert. Your adversary, that's not a friend, by the way, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. But resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same experiences of suffering are being accomplished by your brethren who are in the world. Anxious moments. We all have them. We all have to deal with them. And we all have to sometimes ask somebody else, can you pray for me? I'm struggling with this. Is that hard? Sure, that's hard. That's really hard. And sometimes we try to handle it internally, and sometimes it doesn't turn out too well, and that's when it becomes unhealthy. Anxiety is something that we have to live with. Not let it consume us, which it happens with some. And I know people that have anxiety as a problem, it's abnormal, and they say, I don't want to be this way. But I am. I don't know why I feel this way, but I do. Nobody understands it. And I don't want to be this way. We need to put our trust in God as where it needs to be. And then again, put others ahead of ourselves, and we will be better for it. My generation especially is called the me generation, because we were brought up to worry more about ourselves than other people. And it caused a lot of anxiety. And it need not be. Because when we put others ahead of ourselves, everything's better. Not that we don't need to worry about ourselves and the things about ourselves to see that we accomplish what we need to, but we need to put others ahead of ourselves. In Matthew 22, it's all summed up in verses 34 through 39, when it said, but when the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered themselves together, one of them a lawyer. Asked him a question, testing him, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And he said to them, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the whole law and the prophets. As we can see in this short lesson and understand and comprehend that we all have anxious moments. We all have those feelings that we wish we didn't have. And how we deal with them as a Christian is very, very important. We can't wave a magic wand, they're going to go away. It won't happen. Think about those things and know that anxiety is something that we all live with. Normal anxiety and there's an abnormal anxiety. And know the difference between the two. And understand that some people do have problems with anxiety and they take medicine and everything else. And they have trouble dealing with that. So if you're with us tonight and you have any problems with anything we've talked about, we're glad to talk to you about it, pray with you, do anything we can to help you. And if you're here and you're not a Christian, we afford you the opportunity to become a Christian and to put on Jesus Christ in baptism for the remission of your sins. And to understand that, to hear, believe, repent, confess, and be baptized is the order that God put into place, not man. And we need to be understanding that, doing that, and letting some of that anxiety go that we don't need. So again, I thank you for the opportunity, and we exhort you to come as we stand and sing number 140.